Well, I'm at Bristol Shipwrights today, and we're standing under the port side of the schooner we're building, this 43-foot Alden schooner, and you know, we've got a number of things going on here. We've been wanting to build a bench down this side of the shop exactly like the one on the other side, because we're going to use it for a planking bench, and that's kind of where we're headed. We're going to get into planking the second layer on this carvel planking over the strip planking, but you know, we're going to clean it up over here. We've got a mast under the bench against the wall that can stay there because we're going to use little lean horses just like we did on the other side. But we also got under the bench here a whole pile of these laminates like this that we cut off of the strip planking. We resawed it in the bandsaw off the strip planking, and we've had every intentions of using it. And we've had some comments about what we might use it for, and it's too bad it'd be a waste and all those things. Well, we're not going to waste it. We're actually going to laminate it together and make deck timbers out of it. So what we're going to do today, right now, we're going to make an 8-foot deck timber. I'll show you how we're going to do it. And we're going to cut these pieces in 8-foot lengths that are usable to us. So it's pretty easy to do. We just got I've got an 8-foot laminate right here, and I'm just going to take a look at the laminate I want to cut. It's a little thin on this end, so I'm going to mark it right here, and I'm going to mark it right here. And that's my little marking gauge right there. And I'm just going to cut that right off. And that off. Now, we're going to take that piece, put it right up here. Now we got 2 more here. Let's see, we got 2 here. We don't want them to be over 8 feet in length because we're going to run them through the planer on a piece of plywood. We don't want them hanging over the end of the plywood. Put that one aside. Well, we've cut up a number of laminates to length, and we're going to run them through the planer here because they're all a little bit different thickness when we resawed them off of the original material when we were cutting the strip planking, and I guess most of it is due to the fact that it wasn't all exactly the same thickness to start. We didn't replane it, so you know, some of the stuff is a little thinner on one end or a little bit different, but one pass through the planer takes care of it. And basically, we've got one nice smooth side, and we've got the rough side that we resawed in our bandsaw, and you know, we're going to be planing the rough side off now. These laminates actually, they curled a little bit. They're cupped like this, but when you put it through the planer, really the planer kind of ramps that cup right down flat before it planes it, so it works out pretty well. Ken was pretty skeptical about this, actually. We had thoughts of trying a sander, one of those big belt sanders that they put things through, but I didn't think that was necessary. I think if you got down maybe to 1/16 of an inch in thickness, you might start having some trouble with it blowing up in the planer, but with this thickness, 1/8 of an inch or a little bit under, we haven't any problems at all. So, you know, it's working out pretty good. So let's run some through the planer and see how it goes. Now, this is something you've probably seen me do before. I haven't seen many people do it, but I don't think there's any danger in it or anything like that. It's just something that very few people do. I don't measure the piece. You know, I haven't measured or checked the gauge on the planer or done anything like that. Basically, what I do is I'm going to take my piece of plywood that I'm going to run it through there on and the laminate, and I'm going to stick them halfway through the planer, or a little bit less than halfway, and then I'm just going to start up the planer and crank the table up until it starts to cut. Now, obviously, it's not going to cut it all the way from one end. When I get it up there adjusted right, I'll probably be down near this end somewhere, and I'll just let that run out, and then I'll just pick the thing up and run it through again, and it'll be adjusted properly for the next laminate. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's fire this thing off. All right. Now we've taken laminates, we've got 10 laminates here, and I kind of inspected one edge of them to make sure there wasn't too many imperfections in one edge, like a split or something like that we didn't want. We do have a little imperfection right there, but that'll be jointed off. I stood them up on the bench on a block on each end, just to kind of even the ends a little tiny bit, and then we clamped them together with some very light clamps. Now, the clamps are up high enough to clear a piece of wood that we've got on the joiner fence, because otherwise these clamps would bang into the joiner fence. The joiner fence is a little bit high, so what we've done is clamped them together. We're going to pick 10 of them up at once and run them over the joiner. Now, people could say that, you know, they're not perfectly packed together at the bottom, and that's true, but we're not too concerned whether the edges are perfectly 90 degrees on each individual laminate. What we're concerned with is getting them to be all basically the same, you know, straightness or even, so that we can run them through the table saw afterwards. Because when we glue them up, we don't want them to be all different widths. It's kind of hard to tell if they're coordinated, you know, exactly right on the jig when we glue them. So, you know, it's to our advantage to join them first, then rip them, and then we're going to put them on the jig. So let's show you what this one's all about. Now I've got my stack of laminates on the jointer right here, and I just want to explain a few things to you. I clamped them together with the ends as even as I could get them on the bench. So this is pretty even up here, and it's pretty even down here. And in the middle, it's not quite so even at the bottom, because the laminates aren't all perfectly straight. So we're going to join them straight, and you know, the first thing I want to tell you about a jointer is you can't make things hollow on a joiner. That's really hard to do. You know, that's a mistake that almost you can't make. So, you know, what we first do when we come to a joiner like this is I'll start kind of in the middle of the thing and take some of that hump down. And then once I've taken a few passes, then we'll start at the end. And what happens is, you know, you start with the end out on the outfeed table like that. So you're not taking any material off of it. And then you're taking material off the middle, and then you hold it down on the outfeed table so that you don't take any material off the other end. So there's different techniques to using a joiner and all that stuff. I'd kind of like to go in to it with you afterwards. But the other thing you'll see us do as we're jointing, you know, I'll be pushing it along like this and then stop, because I want to move my hands. And when I do move my hands, I'm going to pull it back a little bit. Because if you don't, what happens is maybe it'll rock a little tiny bit, or you don't have the same pressure. And if you just keep moving, when you're moving your hands, you'll get a lump out on the outfeed table, and it just messes you up, and it doesn't work. So, you know, I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that either, but I always do it when I'm working with a joiner. I push a little bit. When I want to move my hands, I pull it back a little bit. I apply the pressure again, and then just get going again. So let's try it out. That's good enough. We're going to try it again. Let's take a peek at it. We're getting there. All right, let's go again. We'll start right at the end this time. You think one more? Looks good? Let's do one more. Nice, there you go. There you go, perfect, just like that. I've got my 10 laminates over here, at the table saw now, and I've selected them, you know, so they wouldn't have too many imperfections on one side, and we clamped them together and we jointed them, you know, and the edges came out really nice. They don't have to be perfect, because after they're glued together, they're going to be jointed again and re-ripped after they're, you know, glued together. So, you know, it's just a matter of getting them organized and about the same width so that they clamp together very nicely on the jig. So basically what I'm doing right here now is I just got them set down here, and I got one end on the table saw and the other end on my little jig there, and I'm just evening them up like that so that they're even on the bottom edge. Now these edges are all uneven, and we're going to rip these right off. So we're ripping them to 3 5/8, and we only need 3 inches after we're done. So we got 5/8 of an inch, you know, to tune them up again afterwards. So it's going to come out pretty nice. So I got them evened up. I'm just going to pick them up without letting them slide around. Set them down like so. Turn on the saw. So there, we ripped 10 laminates at exactly the same time. You know, they're not within thousandths of an inch of each other, but they're pretty close, and they're close enough for us to laminate onto our jig right there. So we're going to stack them up on the jig and talk to you about the jig and how we went about making that and different things like that. Let's show you some stuff about our deck timber mold here now. We've used our deck timber pattern that Ken generated quite some time ago to trace out a couple of 2x12s here, and that's what we did, and then we sawed them to that same pattern. Now, you know, every time you do something like this, once you saw that thing to that curve, you want to put your pattern back on there and see if it's the same curve, because lots of times things like this will edge set, you know, as you rip it out. So we wanted to be very careful about that, and we did that. As it is, they didn't really take much of an edge set at all, so we really didn't have to do anything to them. And you know, this is a pretty simple standard setup right here. You see everybody do this. This is what mold is. I'm going to lay it right down here now. This is our deck timber mold right here, complete and ready to use, and I just want to show you a few things about it. The first thing we're going to do actually is to set a piece of plywood right down the middle of it here. Now we've got a center line on the mold. We're going to slide it right down this way, Ken, because we want to center it on the mold like that, because it's not a radius, it's a parabolic curve. Next thing we're going to do is just put a little piece of wood right there and one down the other end, and take our laminate pile and just kind of set it on there like that and tap it a little bit just to even the laminates up on one side. Now it doesn't matter if they're exactly even on the other side at all. So now we're just going to pick it up, take that piece out, and set that right on top of the plywood like that. Now that's close enough, just like that. Now we can always put a block of wood on both sides of it and a clamp across to keep them even. Right now this is only for demonstration purposes, and like I said, we're going to have somebody else glue all these up, but we're going to prepare all the laminates, and once we got that done, we'll just fasten them right down or clamp them right down with C-clamps like this. And I think we've got probably like, what, 30 laminates in there or something like that?
I have no idea, Lou.
But, you know, we've got plenty of them, and if we were to run out, these things are like Doritos. We just make some more of them. So that's it. That's the way that's going to work out. Just like that. And they're nice and tight. The glue lines are going to be really nice and tight. And we're going to have enough clamps to do 2 rows at the same time. So that's pretty much it, just like that. You know, we're gonna tape off the 2x so we don't get glue on them with packaging tape. We'll tape off the piece of plywood so we don't get glue all over that. And we'll tape off this piece so when we put it on top, we don't glue that down on top of the laminates. And it doesn't matter how much glue comes squeezing out the side. We'll just touch that up with a little hand electric plane, take the glue off one side, joint that side, and then re-rip it in the table saw, and they'll come out absolutely beautiful. And believe me, there's about 30 laminates in there. They're just under 1/8 of an inch. And when you laminate something like this, it couldn't be any stiffer no matter what you do, because you know, they have no flexibility whatsoever when they're done. I think they make terrific deck timbers, because you know, if you bought stock like oak stock and you cut it out, it would take sets, and then you have checking problems, and you know, we don't have seasoned white oak to work with and everything. These laminates are absolutely the best way to go for us in this particular project. Well, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank our patrons on our Patreon page, because without them, we wouldn't be able to go through all of this stuff, and it wouldn't be as enjoyable. So it's pretty nice to have a family of patrons. And the other thing I wanted to do is just show you this. This is, you know, the scrap off the scrap. You know, we did use the scrap that we generated for planking the boat, and now we've got more of it. So now we're trying to figure out what we're going to be able to do with this. We thought we'd make witches' brooms.